It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, folks, we're continuing our journey with the politicians, finding out what's going on in the state of Pennsylvania. You know, folks, I keep on telling our viewers here, we like to only deal with facts. You know, we're so fed up with all the nonsense we hear and all the rhetoric we read in the newspapers and hear on television. We only deal with facts. I'm going to ask you a question, folks, and I want you to think about this before I introduce my guest today. If I told you that I was going to sell you something, and I told you that when you buy this product, you will get this, 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 and this, and you'll say, well, I like that, and you buy the product. And you find out that I told you the truth, that you did get this, 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 and this, then you would say that's a good product. When Governor Corbett ran for governor, or he ran for attorney general, Governor Corbett said he was going to do certain things before he became attorney general. The things he stated he was going to do, he did. He ran again, and he accomplished what he wanted to do the first 4 years. And he said, this is what I want to do for the next 4 years. And he accomplished that as well. Now he ran for governor, and he said, I want to create jobs, I want to restore fiscal discipline to Harrisburg, I want to hold the line on taxes, I want to create more educational opportunities. And everyone, the majority of the Commonwealth said, we like that, so you voted for him. Well, now we're in the process on that journey. I like Governor Corbett, there's no question about it. Then there's a reason for that, folks. Forget the Democrat or Republican nonsense. I'm talking about people who talk with facts. Today I have on my guest, I'm very honored to have him on the show, is our Lieutenant Governor, Jim Cawley. Jim is the same way. Jim is a no-nonsense person. He'll tell you the way it is. Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Sam, it's great to be back.
I stated that before. I wanted you to know that because I'm very frustrated about what's happening in the state of Pennsylvania. And I like to deal with facts. My father used to say there's always 3 sides of the story. You know, your side, my side, and the true side.
Truth,
right. So you heard what I said
I
about Governor Corbett, and you're a part of that. You know, the both of you ran as a team, and you're a part of that. Where are we right now in that road that he said he wanted to achieve?
Well, Tom Corbett and I went to Harrisburg promising really 3 things fundamentally. First, we were going to change the way that Harrisburg conducted its business. We thought that the direction of our state had gotten seriously off track in the previous administration, and we wanted to try to change that. And one of the main ways we were going to do that was the second point that you pointed out in your introduction, which was that we wanted to restore fiscal discipline. Now, what that means is that we could no longer continue to spend money on things that we couldn't afford anymore. We were going down the road of mortgaging our children's future. And Tom Corbett and I said, that's wrong. Because, you know, Sam, what's amazing is when I get around the Commonwealth and I ask people, who is it that you want to pay your bills on the expenses that you're incurring today? Do you want to pay them? Do you want your children to pay them? Or do you want their children to pay them? And every responsible adult, and certainly every parent, says, I want to pay my own way. I don't want to burden my children with my expenses. And that's really what the first 2 budgets and now this 3rd budget that Governor Corbett has provided the legislature is all about, making sure that we live within our means. That means, though, that some of those things that we were spending on 3-4 years ago, we can't afford anymore. And you know, it's kind of interesting. Everybody cheers the goring of oxes until it's your ox. And we recognize that there had to be some tough choices to be made in order to make sure that we live within our means, and keeping another promise we made, which was not to raise Pennsylvanians' taxes. And the third real tenet, the third real goal of this administration has been to partner with the private sector in order to create family-sustaining jobs. And when you look at where we are today versus when we got there, when we first got there, we inherited a deficit of $4.2 billion. And by implementing that fiscal discipline that I just talked about, we were able to eliminate that deficit, again, without raising taxes. And when you look at what the private sector has been able to do in this during the time of this administration, they've been able to create over 110,000 new jobs. So we believe that we're on the right track. Could we do a better job, perhaps, at telling our story? Yeah, We probably could, but certainly the things that Tom Corbett and I promised as candidates, we believe we're delivering on for the people of Pennsylvania as governor and lieutenant governor.
Cuts were made in different areas with your budget, and I think there's where some of the problems start happening. We have different organizations that got hit. And in the local communities, if it was a ABC organization that helped a lot of kids, et cetera, and their fundings were cut, well, now it says, how can the governor do that to that organization? And why would the governor want to take these poor kids away here, okay? And these cuts are made. How do you explain that?
Well, the way we explain it is this, is we had to prioritize what it was to get the most amount, the most bang for our buck out of what we were spending already. There are certain requirements that we have that come down to us from the federal government that we had to spend certain amounts of dollars in certain areas. When you look at it, there are really three cost drivers in state government. There is the Department of Public Welfare, the Department of Education, and the third, kind of tied in with debt service, is the Department of Corrections. When you take those 3.5, 4 areas, you know how much money you have left? Of every dollar that's being sent to Harrisburg, you've just consumed 90 cents of every dollar that's sent. So on that remaining dime, you have to try to run the rest of state government. And what you find is with those other cost drivers, there's not a lot of wiggle room there as to how much you can cut or shave. We've tried to be creative as much as we could in those areas, but the truth of the matter is the discretionary funds are only about a dime of every dollar that's sent.
Well, I want to get into the fraud also, and with the
Sure.
but let me stick on the expenses. When revenues increase, it's like a household. I mean, you have 2 people working, and you're going out for dinner 4 times a week, and you buy a new car every 2 years, and all of a sudden your spouse loses a job. Well, now from $90,000 a year, you're making $45,000. So what do you tell your spouse, or you say, look, we have to cut out the dinners. We can't buy a car every, you know, and you cannot have your $50 allowance. You get $25,000. Till I get another job and I'm bringing increased revenues. So now, to me, revenues are critical in the state of Pennsylvania. Well, how does that happen? Through jobs, okay? So now you said something, and I said we deal with facts. 100 and some thousand jobs have been created.
Over 110,000 in the
How
private
many have
sector.
been lost?
In the private sector, that's 110,000 net gain.
Net gain.
In the public sector, through both the state government, county governments, local governments, we've lost about 20,000 public sector jobs, a little over 20,000 public sector jobs. So in the net, again, and we believe and we hope that most, if not all, of those public sector employees have transitioned into the private sector and are part of that 110,000+.
Okay, now here's where I alluded to the fact that I know politics is important, and good politicians make good government, all right? However, I get a little upset when I see whether it's Republican against Democrat or Democrat, and the mindset is we got to gain control. We got to gain control again. Well, instead of saying, well, let's do our job now and make it, make our Commonwealth as strong as possible, their motive is, we got to destroy those Republicans, and if it was the other way around, it would be Republican. We got to get the House back. And I think people are upset with that kind of nonsense, Jim. You know, let's get the job done. You know, how do you deal with that every day? Because I'd be punching people in the head at this particular point in time.
Well, what's amazing, Sam, is this. You are right. Time and time again, we are told by constituents, by voters, you know, put aside the partisanship, don't pat yourself on the back, just get the job done. Well, that, more than anything else, is the big difference between the previous administration and this administration. Previous administration, in a lot of ways, you had a nice show horse. You had a lot of press conferences, a lot of stories being told, all of that. In this administration, with this governor, you have a workhorse. You have somebody who is just setting about the business of doing what it is he said he was going to do, very often without that press conference, without that fanfare, without that falderall. So we have, and somebody who consistently extends his hand, reaches across the aisle to try to pull in as many folks from the other party as we possibly can to get this job done. Does it get frustrating? Yeah, but you know what? The people's business is worth it. Yes. We asked for this.
Well, tell Tom Corbett that when he does all these great things, he should go to that high mountain and yell it and let people know about it. I'm talking to Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley. I'm not done with him, folks. We're going to talk about the liquor stores. Now we're hearing all these things about, you heard Senator Udicek say, we're going to probably lose 30 to 36,000 jobs. The small businessman's going to get hurt, and you heard it on the show. You could always go to my Sam Lesante website or our website and listen to the show. We come back, I want to ask him about that. And to continue on, how many times have we been hearing, we're going to give you property relief, we're going to give you tax relief, we're going to give you school board tax relief? Well, have we seen it, folks? Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks, and welcome all the new viewers in the Harrisburg area. Once in a while, the show is seen there, and I appreciate the nice comments. My website, sam@ssptv.com. And, of course, any of our shows that you want to watch, the 21 we produce, especially the girls, is really doing great. Just check us out. My guest today, Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley. Was on the show before he ran as for Lieutenant Governor with our Governor, Tom Corbett. I said before, I respect Tom Corbett. I met him before, and I don't care whether he was Democrat, Republican, or Indonesian. It doesn't make any difference to me. He's an honorable person. When the thing with Penn State happened, and I have a good friend of mine at my breakfast club, okay, who was very, he's conservative, but he calls a spade, very upset with Corbett, thinking that Corbett was involved, knew a lot more what was going on at Penn State, and I couldn't disagree with him more. I know Tom Corbett as to be an honest person, and if he knew of anything, he would have been the first person there. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. As a matter of fact, let's not forget that there were several other levels of law enforcement that had the opportunity to investigate this situation and failed to do so. Tom Corbett, as Attorney General, when it was brought to his attention, was the first one to launch an investigation. Look, I know this is a terrible tragedy for all of us, for all Pennsylvanians. Penn State is very much a part of who we are as Pennsylvanians. It's a marvelous, world-class institution. We're all, by extension, football fans of Penn State football. And what happened to that program and what in turn happened to the university is a tragedy. But the last thing we should do is compound the tragedy by trying to find shadows where they don't exist. And the simple truth of the matter is, Tom Corbett, as Attorney General, launched the investigation. The proof is in the pudding. 43 convictions out of 45 indictments. That's virtually unheard of.
And I wouldn't think anything less. I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, okay? Let's get back to the privatization of the liquor stores, okay? Senator, and you saw, I wanted you to listen to part of the show he had with me. He said that it's, it's a one-time deal with new dollars coming in, saying that it's like stimulus dollars, and that the governor said that on his inauguration that he was done with the one-time gimmicks, because what he's afraid of is as soon as you get this influx of money, then everyone will put it in their budget, which they shouldn't because it's stimulus money, okay? And he also stated on the program that there'll be 3,000 jobs lost in the liquor stores, and there'll be anywhere from 30 to 36,000 private sector jobs lost, okay? Now, when you look at that, you say, oh my God, you just said, we're trying to create jobs. Now here we are going to get rid of jobs.
Well, that's exactly right, Sam. That's why the argument just doesn't hold any water. Why would a candidate and a governor who has spent all of his time to date trying to make good on his promise to partner with the private sector in creating family-sustaining jobs all of a sudden try to do something else? Doesn't make any sense. Let's first approach the issue of, take the second half first, I guess, of those job opportunities. That presupposes that there won't be private sector growth once we privatize the state liquor system. I mean, it's been 80 years since Prohibition was repealed in the United States. Happy anniversary. It was 1933. And since that time, here in this Commonwealth, not a lot's changed in the way in which we are granted access to wine and spirits in this state. So what Governor Corbett said was, it's time for Pennsylvanians to enjoy the same convenience, the same selection, the same competitive pricing that 48 other states already enjoy. They must be getting it right. It's only us in Utah that remain with a full control system. So the governor proposed an idea for the first time ever in the history of the Commonwealth. a measure little different than the one that the governor proposed, a measure passed the House of Representatives. It is going to provide opportunity for our current state store employees to be transitioned from the public roles to the private roles. And we're going to provide tax incentives to the private sector to hire those folks. We're going to provide, if they want to stay on public employment, we're going to provide civil service extra points for those who want to try to bump into some other job. We're also providing money for job retraining if that's what they want to do. But we believe that a vast majority of those employees are going to be assumed into the private sector because they know the business better than most. As far as the education issue is concerned, right now today with the governor's budget that he proposed, we are going to spend $5.5 billion state tax dollars on basic education, K through 12. It is the largest investment in state tax dollars in our history. And that's got nothing to do with this extra $1 billion that we will get from the sale of the state store system. The governor said we should be out of the business, philosophically, fundamentally. We should be no more in the business of selling liquor than we should be in the business of selling gasoline or any other commodity. But what he said was, being that we're going to get out and we're going to have this extra money, where should we put this money? And for Tom Corbett, there was but one answer. We should invest it in our children. We should invest it in education. This is over and above the most historic investment in our history. And what he said as well was, the last thing we want to do is create another stimulus environment. So we want to make sure that the 500 school districts that receive this money can't put it into their general fund to hire more teachers or things like that. So he created the Passport for Learning block grant program. This is where the senator is correct. It is a one-time block grant over 4 years, but it can only be spent in 4 very specific areas. School safety. Certainly since Sandy Hook, we all know how important it is. We've been reminded of how important it is to provide our children with a safe learning environment. Second, the Ready by 3 program. Educators across the country are telling us that unless a student is at grade level for reading, writing, and mathematics, by the 3rd grade, they play catch-up for the rest of their lives. Individualized learning programs. By the way, all of these are technology-intensive, one-time purchase, technology-intensive, and important programs. And the 4th would be what's called the STEM curriculum. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These are the disciplines that the private sector are telling us are going to be in demand for a 21st century workforce in Pennsylvania. Tom Corbett's providing an opportunity for school districts to spend over and above what they would to provide the quality education that they're providing now to be able to meet even greater goals in a one-time type of block grant format.
So we're going to make $1 billion when this process is completed.
That is our belief, and that is also the belief of the independent entity that monitored all this and crunched all the numbers for us.
All right. And I'm sure a lot of study has gone into this particular proposal and move. What are we doing? What are we making now versus what will we be making?
Well, see, that's the beauty of this as well, is that under the plan that the governor outlined, and we're still massaging the numbers of what the House proposed, but under our initial plan, it was going to be at least revenue neutral, i.e. we weren't going to lose any money. We believe that we're actually going to gain money. To answer your question directly, because we talk straight here on this program,
yes.
It fluctuates depending on sales within that year. It could have been anywhere from 75 to 100 million. It depended on what sales were in that year. We believe that with the private sector being able to do what it does best, be experimental, be entrepreneurial, try to present new products to the market, that at the very least, we won't lose any money, and we will likely gain more in tax dollars as we move forward.
We come back, folks. I'm talking to Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley. We come back, I want to talk about incentives to create more jobs, small businesses. I hear this all the time. We're for the small businesses. You know, I hear from the federal government, Obama said, we're going to help the small businesses. Well, folks, start a small business and then you tell me what you see happens. We'll be back right after this. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Remember, sam@ssptv.com, my email, and don't forget, go to our website, ssptv.com, for all of our shows, and every one of the Sam Lesante shows are on there. My guest today, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Pennsylvania, Jim Cawley. Jim, what are we doing for incentives? Remember, when we create jobs, we create revenue for the state of Pennsylvania. That's what happens. And I've been hearing, you know, that we got to help the small business people. We got to help the small businessman. I don't want to say BS, but it's BS, okay? So what is Corbett doing to help create incentives for the small business people?
You know what he's doing? He's doing the same thing for the small business person that he's doing for any business person in this state. He's changing the playing field fundamentally. Now, what do I mean by that? When we first came to office, we were one of the few states in the union that charged both a capital stock and franchise tax and a corporate net income tax. With this budget, when it passes this June, come next January, the capital stock and franchise tax in this state will be gone. It will be eliminated forever. We have the largest, however, corporate net income tax in this state. And these are all taxes that small businessmen pay, yes, that all businessmen pay. We're going to take the corporate net income tax from 9.99% over the next 10 years and reduce it down to 6.99%, which will take us from the most expensive to somewhere in the middle. We're going to work to remove the cap from the net loss carry forward, which is extremely difficult, as you know.
Yes.
When you start out a business, you've got to try to amortize your debt over as long a period as you can. And right now, we've got a cap on that. We're going to work to remove that cap. What we're going to do is change the tax structure in the state to make it more inviting. That's step one. Step two is we have been and will continue to fight the fight with the bureaucracy within state government. As you know, as other business people around this state know, if you go to, you pick it, PennDOT, DEP, DCED, LNI, EIEIO, whatever you want, wherever you want to go in the alphabet soup. Sometimes you're lucky enough, and we've been working hard at trying to do this, sometimes you're lucky enough to find somebody who understands that it's not us versus them. It's not government versus the private sector, that we're all in it together. But there are still those in the government who don't quite get that. We need to make sure that government regulates. That's appropriate. We want to protect the public health, the public safety, and we want to protect the public's welfare. And the best way we protect the public's welfare is by allowing the private sector to create family-sustaining jobs. So we've got to try to change that mentality within the bureaucracy as well. Now, I could talk to you about all kind of specific incentive programs, and we've got those, and they help. But they're kind of icing on the cake. The first thing you need is cake before you put icing on it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And sometimes people are listening to this who they don't really understand. Not that I'm saying they're not capable, but when you have a business and you see all these taxes and everything happen, then a small business says, look, I have to lay off 3 more people.
Right.
And that's where they get affected. Very quickly, I hope the state is addressing the fraud with the access cards and everybody who's abusing it. And I'm all for helping people. I've said this many times, but we see the abuse. And I know Tara Toohill, Representative Toohill, and Knowles and Argyle and a lot of other people, and I don't want to miss anybody, who are addressing this. We got about a minute and a half left. Where are we at in the state in trying to get rid of these frauds?
We've been working in the Department of Public Welfare under our former and great Secretary, Gary Alexander, and that work is continuing now in order to make sure that those who are able-bodied or those who can get out into the workforce get there as quickly as possible. It's the most humane thing that can happen because, you know, it's the old adage of you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach him to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Now, there are those who can't and will never, unfortunately, be in a position to be able to provide for themselves. And that safety net should exist for them, but making sure that we separate out the two, make sure that those who really are in need get the services that they need.
In closing, Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley, our seniors worked all their lives to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. To see them suffer today and to see our seniors who are struggling to pay oil bills and food bills and prescription bills, et cetera, who went to the service, who gave us the freedom that we had today, it breaks my heart to see that they are suffering the way they're suffering. And I'm hoping that your administration is looking kindly on them as to how they can help them.
We have been focused on little else, as a matter of fact. They are part of our greatest generation. They have, as you said, built our communities, the Little Leagues, the Kiwanis, the Rotaries. You know, I grew up in Levittown, and that generation is the generation that really helped create my community down in Bucks County. and through our Department of Aging, our Department of Public Welfare, and any way we can, we are trying to be there for our senior citizens.
Now we're going to hold you accountable.
I look forward to it.
Okay, folks, Lieutenant Governor Jim Cawley, let me tell you something. I know he's coming in town. Chad, his public relations guy, said, look, the Lieutenant Governor's coming in town if you'd like to have him on the show. I always love to have him on the show because I want to get facts here, and it's on tape, okay? It's on tape. Thanks again.
Thank you,
Tell
Sam.
the governor I was asking about him.
I most certainly will.
Good health to you and your family. Happy
Thank you.
Easter. Folks, remember, ssptv.com, excuse me, my email, sam@ssptv.com. Anytime, give me a holler. See you next time.